Hello, everyone. Welcome. What do you think of our cunning new little video? I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for being on time. Thank you very much for joining me for what I think is going to be a very exciting session. As you can see right now, AI Masterclass. And the reason we chose the word masterclass is because there's a lot of AI conversation, in case you hadn't noticed. And we really want to get down to brass tacks. We want this to be a practical and useful session, something that you can actually use. As you can see from the little tagline under the title there, real world applications for transforming pharma content, compliance, and engagement. So that's where we're going to focus our AI conversation. If you're here for AI drug discovery, I'm afraid that's not the right room. We are going to be talking about how those of us who are involved in marketing, customer engagement, HCP, engagement of any kind, are going to be able to use this technology going forward to make a significant dent on your operations, your visibility, your creativity. So I can see a few people are already active in the chat window. Lovely to meet you too. I want to see everybody, and I can see we've got a good audience already joined in. So please do indeed say hello, introduce yourself, and we will be interested to hear what it is that you would most like to hear on this webinar as well. What are you struggling with? What's a challenge? What's an opportunity for you? So don't be shy. This webinar should be a dialogue, not just a one-way street. I want to see that chat window burning up my eyeballs as we go through this session. The other thing I'm going to do right from the outset is to actually launch a poll question. I would love for you guys to take a look at your screens, and you will see this appear in just a moment. The first two-part question is called, where is the pain? What is the challenge? And you may notice that this question doesn't even mention AI, because as we all know, we shouldn't start with the technology, we should start with the business need. So that's what this question is designed to do. Please do answer. Of course, you will want to tick every single option, and I'm evil, as many of you already know. I'm only allowing you to choose one option each time, so choose the one that is most priority or biggest issue to you. Okay, I can see already got a few people answering, so that's great to see. Okay. I'm going to introduce our fantastic panelists. You'll be pleased to know it's not just me, as you can see on the screen, but it's these beautiful people as well. So, Nick, so pleased to have you on stage. You and I have been in many a conference room over the past few years, had many a fascinating conversation about how we advance our omni-channel operations, our customer engagement, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Grunenthal, if you don't know, is a medium-sized pharma company, but also a trailblazer when it comes to AI implementation. Took a very early lead in terms of pilots and quickly found out what was working and what wasn't. So it's absolutely marvelous that we've got Nick here, who's got a track record of leading blockbuster brands across pharma and consumer health. So really appreciate that. Casper is a late addition. You may have seen Jason's name on the list, but Casper is equally interesting and attractive, and will indeed ensure that we have some practical examples to share. Casper was until recently employed at Ferring, where he was in charge of omni-channel operations there, did a marvelous job, and has been something of a trailblazer since he joined at Anthill. Absolutely fantastic. We've got some of your wisdom to share today. Ryan is global head of commercial operations at Santen, and deserves something of an accolade for joining us currently from Melbourne, 11 p.m. where he is right now. And Ryan, you've been somebody I've got to know quite well over the last year. Santen is not the largest company, but it's certainly ambitious, and it's certainly a company that, Ryan, you appear to be spearheading in a significant way, and I'm so delighted that you're here to come and share some of your wisdom with us. And then we have Sandra. Sandra, you may have seen on stage once or twice recently, did a great job. Sandra, you didn't have to turn your video on just yet. Good to see you though, anyway. And Sandra is at Danone, where she's gone now, Global MCE Acceleration Manager, and is very much hands-on with putting some of this stuff in action. And has some great case studies and stories already in her experience. Of course, Danone, not a traditional pharma company, has a lot of nutritional products and kind of bridges the divide between consumer and pharma. So a very interesting case as well. So you might also recall, actually, before I go to that, quick disclaimer. All of our panelists speaking from their own personal opinion and not necessarily representing their companies. Today's session is being recorded. You don't need to ask me for it. It will be sent to you afterwards. You might remember that when you signed up for the webinar, you actually answered a couple of questions. So let's have a look at the results. Question 1, as you can see, is how would you rate your organization's current readiness to scale AI-powered content marketing initiatives? So here's the breakdown. So what took the 42.9% top spot? We're still exploring, mostly pilots and testing. Okay, so if that's where you are, you're not behind, you are with the majority. 24%, quarter of you saying we launched a few real initiatives, but scaling remains a challenge. Well, you're in the right place. Nearly 20% say we have a clear roadmap and are actively scaling those AI-driven efforts. They're the ones perhaps slightly ahead of the pack. Great to see. That is a significant minority. We have nearly 10% of people saying already integrated at scale across multiple functions, right in the lead there. And then finally, 6% were not pursuing any initiatives currently. Okay, that was the first question. Let's move on to question number 2. To date, have you seen measurable impact, not just efficiency gains, from any AI-driven marketing or content initiatives in pharma? Have you seen results? Let's have a look. Again, too early to say. Results still pending from just over a quarter of you. Nearly 20%, I'm not close enough to be able to measure anything. 17%, some impact, but only small improvements. 15%, some impact, it's qualitative rather than measured. So hearsay, stories of some success. No, not yet seeing tangible results from just over 10%. And finally, at 10%, we've seen clear performance improvements. So that is actually the smallest answer on the list. So some way to go before we indeed have that full complement of where we want to be. Okay, so that was the answer to that. Let's have a look at what the answers to the poll you've just been answering is. I can see about 3/4 of you have answered it. I'll hold it open for 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, everyone who answered. And I'm going to end that poll. Zoom gets slower and slower every day for some reason, but we will see that. Now, an interesting thing that's going to happen today, something that we've not really done much of before, but because this is a masterclass, we want this to be a practical session, and we're going to post the link to a Miro board. We've got a resident scribe who's going to write down some of the notes, but you indeed can add your own notes to this as well. So please do make sure that you are looking at that. We'll periodically put it on the screen just so you can all see what's going on, even if you don't follow the link. Here are the results to the questions. They're on your screen right now. What's the most frustrating bottleneck? You can see the list there. 34%, just over a third of you saying endless rounds of internal stakeholder coordination and approvals. So it's the people pain and the rounds of approvals that are killing us. So that's very interesting. I think interesting that what didn't actually rise to the top of that particular list. Second part, which of these would have the biggest business impact if fixed? So speed and quality are the 2 winners there from what I can see. Faster time to market and higher quality HCP engagement. Perhaps no surprises, but very good to see nonetheless. Okay. I am going to get rid of my slides and I'm going to invite the panel to turn their videos on. And there we go. There's Casper. Perfect. There's Sandra again, Nick, and Ryan. Perfect. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, being willing to share. I would love to hear if there's any reaction to the poll. I would also love to hear, this is a practical one. So I'd like to hear where your very specific, if possible, challenges are in your own organizations. Where is the pain for you in particular? What has been frustrating you about the old world? And you might even hint to what's been frustrating you in the early stages of climbing this AI mountain that we are indeed scaling. So, who wants to go first?
I can start with an anecdote, Paul. A few years back, I was in a hotel room very late, listening to a conversation between a global brand manager and a couple of local teams. And the global brand manager was trying to explain why the campaign was delayed and they wouldn't get it on time. And I was just listening into that pain of these endless review rounds that the poor global manager had to go through. And in the end, the local teams, they actually wanted to adopt the global campaign, but they couldn't wait for it. So they had to go their own way. So I can really, feel with the people who voted on that as the biggest pain point, because I've seen it so many times in my career.
Mm. Who else?
I can go next, actually,
Please,
and say, I think we can all agree there are many pain points that we'd like to address. It's a really complex environment that we're working from, because not only do we need to think about whether the concept translates, but we also have to consider local market regulations, product specificities, along with the local market context, and it all becomes very complicated, right? So there is a lot of delay that comes into that. And then in an environment where we know we need to enable more personalized omni-channel communication, we know we need to create much more content, but we also have to understand strategically what that content needs to be. What is going to resonate with our HCPs, what's not going to resonate, what do we need to do more of, and where we need to focus our time. I think in terms of specific pain points that I'd like to solve with AI, they're really quite universal. We know we need to produce more content. We don't necessarily always have the budget or the FTEs to do that. So cost and time are up there for me as my big ones. And I think something that goes hand in hand with that is also content discoverability across markets, across languages. I've long said that cost and time saving goes beyond just creating new content. It's also about getting the most out of your content. And we have, and I know everybody else, I'm sure, has a lot of really great content, both globally, locally as well, that's just not always being used to its full extent. And I think a lot of times it's just simply a case of our local marketeers don't know or don't remember that it's there. So yeah, cost, time, discoverability are my biggest pain points.
Thank you, Sandra. And just staying with you for 1 second longer, you talked about senior level direction, for want of a better word. Do you think it's important that the leaders of our companies know what we are trying to achieve with AI before getting along with it? Or do you feel like it should be experimental and grassroots in nature? What is the best approach?
In my opinion, you absolutely need to have top-down prioritization, because the level of cross-functional involvement you need is intense. And those different functions all have priorities of their own. So without that direction, I think it becomes very hard to activate the resources that you need.
And maybe, Paul, if I can jump in there as well, I completely agree with what Sandra's saying. That that leadership from the top, I think if you get that right and you give clear direction and clear mandate, then that's where you stop having 1,000 AI pilots, conflicting tools, different systems, which makes a mess in the long run. So I think that's probably the biggest point here, I think. And when we see that point come up around endless rounds of internal stakeholder coordination approval, I think that leadership at the top is key, and really can set you up well for leveraging some of this power in the future. And if that's not there, it can go the other way pretty quickly.
So Ryan, would you say it is imperative for leaders to understand the technology, even from a technical basis? Because I hear so many stories every day of leadership mandates saying, yes, of course we have to use AI, but that's all the direction that they are giving. And they don't understand what's possible and what isn't.
Yeah, I think so. The businesses we work in are very complex, aren't they? So senior stakeholders have a lot on their plate. But I think especially in this area, they need to understand part of that technical part of it, and then also the impact part of it. But if they understand those two things, I think it really does empower them to make decisions. And that's where you can move quickly. And if you move quickly with the right support or the right internal skill set, that's where I think you can kind of achieve scale quite quickly. And we saw in the poll results that you showed that we have 10% of organizations or people out there that have achieved scale. And that gives me hope, right? We can do this. It has been done before. So while it's not a huge portion of the population, 10% of companies are doing this. So that's probably organizations that have had strong leadership in this space.
Yeah. So Sally Taylor just wrote in the chat, these pain points are a repeat of previous discussions we've had over the last couple of years on the implementation of omnichannel. Well, I sort of agree and I sort of don't, Sally, because of course omnichannel is quite specific in what it is attempting to do, whereas AI, of course, is really at the beginning of its journey, and we don't know what it can do as yet. So I think there's a good reason to talk openly about these pain points. Nick, I alluded in my introduction to the fact that Grünenthal has been a trailblazer when it comes to those pilots, but also I'm aware you've had some strong leadership on this as well. So what would you regard as the difficulties in your journey as you've gone through it so far?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if we're trailblazers as such, given the survey results, because they're quite impressive. But yeah, I think one thing you mentioned, Paul, that rings true is that senior management understanding of the technology. Because we're all learning here, and certainly I've had the feedback in the past that Nick, you're being too technical. Just and a lot of the inherent use cases that we have for AI is based on the technology, and it's evolving all of the time, and So I think there does need to be more understanding at a senior level in terms of the technology and some of the limitations, because it's about data quality. So, nothing's going to be perfect straight away. You have to have the data quality and the maturity in tandem. But also, when people don't understand things so well, then C-suite's default position shows the money, shows the return on investment. And that's when it becomes a little bit more difficult. So that's a bit of a common challenge, I would say.
Sure. I'm going to launch another poll. I want to move this conversation away from just pure the pain and the challenge onto, I guess, the opportunity and, what in your minds, and I'm asking the panel again here, is the greatest utility that you think AI should be perhaps doing already within your organizations? Is it about discovery and exploration? Is it about creativity and messaging and content production? Is it about personalization, obviously the holy grail that many of us have had before? Or is it about the management and the assembly of all of the different things we do? Many different aspects, of course, that AI could do potentially, but where are you finding the strongest traction? And I actually want to start this with Casper, if that's okay, just because you get that vision across multiple clients and the breadth of the market. And so I'd like your sort of informed view on where you think that traction is strongest in the early days.
I think there are a number of ways companies are going about it. We, of course, work with one way of going about it. We have a focus on the content. So that's what I've had, content creation and content exploration and things like that with our tools. So that's where I've had the most conversations with companies. But it's also where I see there's a lot of benefits to be made. I saw in the chat that there are some questions about how do you show return on investment. That's always been a headache, right? What about hallucinations and all those kind of things? So I actually think some of the tools that are coming out, and of course I would like to sell my tool here today, but let's not do that. But there are some of those tools that are coming out now that really do improve on very specific use cases of content creation, for example, or exploration, and you can actually measure the outcome. I also think the challenge we discussed before, which was, global to local, for example, that is now easier to overcome because maybe you don't have to wait for those global campaigns anymore. Maybe we can actually create compliant local campaigns based on global materials using AI technology. So I think that's where we have the conversations with the clients right now.
So you seem to be saying, Casper, use the right tool for the right job. And tools are becoming more competent right now.
I overheard a manager in a previous career that said, just use ChatGPT for everything. And I don't think that's the right thing to do because you actually run into compliance issues and things like that. So you want to use the right tool for the right purpose, for sure.
I've been reliably informed that the Miro board is lighting up with the challenges, so thank you to those of you who are scribing in there. We will occasionally share it on the screen from time to time. And I can see that about 60% of you have answered my questions, so I'll hold that open a few more seconds. Please do answer. It's great to get your information in with such a good audience. Oh, there we go. Oh, look at that. Look at that. All sorts of exciting stuff going on. So if you're not filling that in, then probably you're just watching us, which is not a terrible alternative, I guess. But do head over to the Miro board if you can, as it's clearly active as we speak today. I want to hear from others of you on where you believe that the traction is coming from. Can we do a quick round robin in terms of that, and then I will close the poll.
Sure, I'm happy to start. For me, Paul, I think it's probably a little bit of content discovery. I think there's definitely efficiencies that we can get there. And this varies from organization to organizations to depend on how good you are at organizing your vault and your internal systems. But I certainly think the content production part is the bit where AI can help. That's, I think, where the real value is. Probably less so on the assembly. I think if you can discover the content and you can produce new content, the assembly of that maybe is slightly less important. And obviously the personalization is a big part. I think we still haven't probably achieved personalization at scale. I'm not sure many have, but that's definitely where we'd like to go. So certainly around content production and discovery, I think that's where that's where the time is spent, the money is spent, and I think that's where we can make some efficiency savings.
Nick, Sandra.
I can go next. Actually, I would agree with what Ryan has just said. What I'm finding is actually the content creation. So being able to access the myriad of research that we have available, and then to draw insight from that and recommend content to overcome different concerns or challenges that we have with our HCPs, that the AI itself is identifying in the buyer personas is a very interesting use case for us as well.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah, so I'd probably put in 3 buckets, one of which is omnichannel is difficult. So there's lots of ways that AI can enable content creation, tagging, MLR review speed up. There's lots of ways that it can help us interpret the data in terms of agents that help answer specific questions and help us access the data that we have in dashboards. And then there's the whole customer engagement piece. How can we drive more personalization, real-time personalized content, next best action recommendations, all things of that nature, which I think are super interesting.
Okay, so I can see that we've got a good poll response. So I'm going to close that now and see whether the audience agree with what you guys have just said. I can tell you already, because I get a sneak preview of the results over here, there is an overwhelming winner on the first question. Hopefully it will arrive on your screen in just a second. With 63% of the vote, what is AI currently best at? Drafting or rewriting content. So it's pretty simple stuff, if I'm totally honest with you. Maybe that's ChatGPT. I don't know, Casper, if that's where that's coming from, but it's a clear strong, and I didn't expect it to come as strongly as that across that particular answer. But where is AI worst at? Understanding nuance or medical complexity, nearly 30%. Same with integrating into workflows and tools we already use. Casper, could you just comment on that, maybe particularly question number 2? On there before we move on. We've got a couple of actual case studies which I want to share, but Casper, your comments on this would be appreciated before we do that.
I'm personally quite impressed with some of the AI engines in terms of how complex they can actually generate content. So I'm surprised about the high rate of that. But then there's the integration part, and maybe that's very important because you want a tool that works seamlessly with the internal platforms you already have. So if you're using a digital asset management like Viva Vault or something like that, it's not nice that if you have to take things out of that and then put it into another tool, right? You would rather have it work directly into the other tools you have. So I understand that pain point. And that's definitely something you should talk to us about afterwards. Selling. But yeah, I think producing content that feels human, I think is a challenge, right? Because we now start to get a little bit immune to too many emojis in content, and we can now recognize when it's very AI written personally, and then maybe we have an AI that reads the content for us and summarizes it, so it becomes a little bit meaningless. So what we need is the AI engines to become better at, maybe think of them as our augmented person helping us creating great content, but we still need that human touch, in my opinion.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for your comment there. Could we perhaps show one or two examples? Casper, I know you have one or two yourself, but do you want to start with Nick or Ryan? Nick, your slides are first on my deck, so I'm going to pick on you if that's okay. Very bad reason for picking on you, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, I'm afraid. So hopefully you can see that on your screen.
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah, so I've just got a couple of use cases which are more general AI use cases. So this isn't about content generation. This is about how can we use AI to improve, firstly, in-call effectiveness of our key account managers. So this is a pilot which we're just about to start. That's my disclaimer. The pain point that we have is that we invest a lot of time and effort into generating account plans, and we know that they're not always reviewed pre-call. So very simple use case was how can we within Viva just pull together a summary of our account plan, which can be provided to the key account managers at the press of a button pre-call, which will give them summary of information in the past and suggestions of what they should talk about within their next visit. And the sort of KPIs we're looking at are, how can this reduce pre-call planning time, number one, but also setting this up with a control group where we use it with some key account managers and not with others. What satisfaction ratings do we have from them in terms of the level of information that it's provided? And also, can we see a differential in sales across accounts when we've got this running for a period of time? So fairly straightforward, simple application of how AI can help summarize account plans and hopefully improve in-call effectiveness.
Got another slide here, Nick.
Yeah, another slide is around agents. I mean, we're in the age of agentic AI. We're all really excited about that. So, obviously we working with partners want to set up AI agents, host them a variety of different places, but starting with our website. We know they're fairly easy to train, these AI agents, and in theory, a bit like the last use case, once you set it up, they live forever until you want to update them. So we're looking to have start with one of our brands and set up an AI agent. And again, the beauty of that is that we can really track to a far higher level the amount of engagement we have with the agent. So many people go onto our landing page and then engage with the agent, how long they stay on with the agent, but also what it triggers. I think that's the interesting thing, because we know if there's a good experience and we ask certain questions, then it can prompt them joining even an always-on campaign that's running in the background. So that could be a conversation like, are you interested in us attending that webinar? Attending the next webinar in our series? Great. Would you like us to include you within the invitation for the next? Great. And then we can automatically add them to a campaign. So we think it can really help that personalization, but also triggering follow-on actions.
And that particular one, Nick, that one's well underway from the sounds of things.
No, that one is also in pilot. So we presented before a few times about pilots that we did last year. We've done multiple ones around next best action and personalized content and even open text analysis using AI. But these two pilots have been our focus for the first half of the year, and we're just in setup phase currently.
Okay. Nick, I realize it's an early question, but it seems to be that you are optimistic about them. When it comes to the scaling, just give us a quick word on whether or not you're optimistic that, and whether you're designing in that scalability from the outset, or is that really not the point?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, in terms of the setup, we base our business case for it in terms of the setup costs, and then the KPIs and the differential versus the setup and the total cost of ownership over time. The beauty of these sorts of use cases is they can last forever. I mean, part of the pushback was it maybe costs 50,000 euros to set up, but that's what a third of a key account manager in terms of costs, and we can analyze the data to a far greater degree, and it can last for quite a period of time. So the business case looks healthy. But we need to test it in terms of really how it works.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate you sharing. I wouldn't be surprised if you get some questions there, which I hope you can answer. The next slide goes straight on to Ryan. Ryan, are you ready to share something about this?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Paul. And apologies, there's a fair bit on here. I think so. On the left-hand side, we've got just a use case around email. So this is how can we use AI to create a comprehensive set of targeted emails, both sort of head office marketing emails, but also rep triggered emails, based on the different customer segments that we have. But then also create customer journeys for each brand that contain a series of emails. So this is something that we're working with the Nordics team on. And I think the reason for looking at this in particular was we're launching new brands, but often we're having to do that with the same amount or even less than we had last year, while maintaining sales of existing products. Something's happened in some other part of the world where the company's got financial challenges, which means you still need to launch, but you need to launch with no new resources. So that traditional process of how do you develop the content and the claims for the email, work with your agency to get it designed and what the layout looks like, all the referencing, the translations when you put it across an area like the Nordics with multiple countries and multiple languages. How do you personalize it? All of the cost and effort and time that goes into that. We wanted to use AI, I guess, to see what benefits we could get. So some of the things we're looking to measure were, brand compliance rate. So how easily could the AI pick up what we required for each of our individual brands and follow our guidelines, reducing that need to sort of go back in and edit from our marketing teams. What's the error rate that was happening, the turnaround time. So when we compare the traditional process, how long that would take with an agency, how long would it take using AI to get something that is is ready to send versus working with our agencies. There's the cost and then the creative score. Is it as good an output as the agency content? So I've put a little tick in here. I think we've been able to demonstrate that maybe not across all of these things, but across a lot of these things, we've definitely been able to show success, which gives us hope that we can do this at scale, over the next 12 months. So while it's a pilot, I think it's been successful enough that we can see the excitement of the brand managers and the potential to scale. So that's the email use case. On the right-hand side, there's the using AI to support sort of training of our sales teams. So again, launching mobile products. If we want to create video content to train our sales teams a lot, I guess, on market research or on our core claims documents. If we want to produce material, can we use AI to do that? In the flow down the bottom, it's a bit hard to see, but we know there's hours of research to be done up front. That's got to be done for every individual video. And then there's a series of steps, all which take time and cost money. And again, here, I think coming back to some of the results we saw of where AI can work well, this is where, again, we've just seen it maybe not complete the full process, but at least get us 80% of the way there much quicker and at a much lower cost than what we were doing just 12 months ago.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ryan. And once again, I wouldn't be surprised if you get a few questions coming your way about some of those things. So really appreciate your willingness to share. While we're on the topic of sharing things, Casper, I mentioned you might have a case to share as well. Would you like to bring that up now? You're on mute at the moment, Casper, just FYI.
Sure. Thank you.
Right.
Let me click the right buttons here. So the tool I alluded to is called Arcane, and we have a few use cases that we could share today. Just so I don't want to share all of them, but the ones we brought here are finding content, for example. We discussed that. So how can you, every time I have a meeting with a new client or company, they start with, our Viva Vault needs to be cleaned up. We can't find anything. And so there's something there where it's things get lost among the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of brilliant pieces of work in there. So can you find content, and maybe even in your own language, and search Viva Vault? That's one. Another one is the cost and speed of creating new content. I think Ryan spoke a bit to how that could be done. Personalization, we want to do that, right? But it's super time-consuming, resource-consuming to create different variations of content for our customers. So that's also a place where we feel quite strong with the Arcane tool. And then last but not least, there are also use cases around, for example, creating the final content where it is in templates, so that you don't need to code any HTML or for the email or for the website or the social media post or whatever. So there are some use cases related to that. I'll not go into everything. I'll just jump a little bit ahead and just show one use case. So sorry about all the slides here. So there was one use case. It's a podcast. The challenge was that the sales reps needed training on a new clinical study that was released that supported the product they were promoting. So this team wanted to create a podcast, and they went to an agency to create this training podcast so that the reps could listen to this training update in their car or in front of the mirror or wherever they wanted to do it in their own time rather than sitting in a training session. The agency said that would take weeks and cost a lot of money. So then we wanted to work with this client and show how we could use AI to produce the same manuscript, maybe even create many variations of the manuscript, short ones, long ones, more scientific heavy, more fun, and so on. And we can do that in minutes. And the cool thing here is that you can use compliant sources of information. You don't have to go use, for example, the internet. You just use what you have in your vault. So if it's a clinical study and a brand strategy or segmentation and so on, then it will pull out those documents from your Viva Vault and only generate the new content based on that. And of course, also mark it up. So that's how this works. I'll just show you how that it actually is real. It's not just words I'm saying here. It's actually real. But they saved a lot of time, maybe 80, maybe even more, and almost all of the external cost. Of course, they would have to pay for the tool itself, but that's what they did here. So here you see Arcane, the tool, and I recorded it as a video, but it looks a bit like ChatGPT. So you're familiar with your previous chats, and down here in the bottom you have the prompting area, and here we are creating a podcast with a doctor named Sandra and a journalist named Jason about the impact of type 2 diabetes. And it will only use the documents that we ask it to generate the results from. So no hallucinations, no using the internet, no using things you can't trust, only things in your vault that is already approved. So here now it starts to generate this podcast manuscript. And once it's done, you will see that it actually also shows where it's, so if there's any claims in it or any things that needs to be substantiated, you have these small bubbles, and below you have the references, but you have these small bubbles, the 5 here, and you can see which document in your digital asset management that it pulled it from. So I think you get the picture of how you can use AI to really generate fast results using such a tool like this. And of course, you can prompt it in different ways and ask it to make different variations. So that's the use case I wanted to show today.
And of course, Casper, it does the voices too, right?
It doesn't dub the voices. That's the next step that you need. So it's a different tool, unfortunately. But maybe in a not too far future, we can also integrate those tools.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing. Everyone's had a chance at sharing. Sandra, I know you don't have any slides. Is there anything that you want to add into this conversation about where a story perhaps of where you found some traction or not?
Well, to be honest, we keep finding traction. So we had similar use cases. I can talk around one that we did on email. But actually, now that we have given it to our local teams and they are using it, they keep finding further ways to use it and further ways to get the value from it. So I think from my point of view, it's really just about understanding what the outcome you want to get from it is, and then applying the AI and looking at those results for yourself.
So don't hold back. Thank you.
Very generic, unfortunately.
No, it's all good. Don't worry. Because time is moving fast, as it always does during these good conversations. So 15 minutes left, roughly. I want to do a couple more poll questions in that time. So one that's appearing in your screen is very appropriate for what we're now going to talk about, which is, of course, the actual practice of embedding AI into daily work, making it stick, how to avoid the common mistakes and pitfalls, etc. So if you look at your screen right now, strategy in practice, what is the most useful way to evaluate new AI content tools or solutions from third parties? And then there's a second question, when choosing between AI solutions, what matters most? Okay, so I'll let you go about that. But I would love to hear from the panel practical top tips. If you were to start again, if you were to join a new company that is really at the very beginning of their journey here, what are the key lessons you've got, not just with the experimentation, piloting, and choice that we've talked about already, but with the scaling? I already asked Nick a question about that earlier, but how do we ensure that this becomes something that doesn't just remain pilotitis, as we often say in our industry, and actually gets mainstream once we start seeing some results? What are your practical?
I'm happy to jump in, Paul. Just picking up on something though before we go to that topic in the chat. There's been a fair bit in the chat around hallucinations and how we use AI or how we manage that within AI. I think from our experience, because this is generative, you can just ask it to do it again. So, and none of this is sort of, for external view immediately. So any mistakes, any hallucinations that are happening, is pretty quickly overcome in my experience by asking it the same question again, getting that regeneration, and normally that kind of weeds that out. So we haven't experienced any issues with that, because you get a chance to kind of catch it pretty quickly and easily before it becomes a problem. But onto the question about how you scale this. I think you need to, and we haven't achieved scale, but I can certainly see the power of what we're doing. And I think the preparing the upstream and the downstream of whatever process you're working on, because this technology can be very powerful, and if we get it right, it can have a big knock-on effect in the organization. So starting to think early around what the upstream and the downstream knock-on effect of this is, so that you can prepare your organization for it. I think that will go a long way to overcoming that scalability problem, where you might run into challenges with legal processes, approvals, or anything else.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Casper answering the questions directly about hallucination on his product Arcane as well there. Sandra, I detected that you might have been about to answer as well on the scaling question.
Yeah.
Could you give us some thoughts, please?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there have been a lot of lessons that have come out through this process, and really, if I could give any recommendations, my first one I've already mentioned is the fact that you have to get the prioritization from top down to make sure that you have the resources you need from all of your cross-functional stakeholders. You need the time for them. Another surprising observation that I had is the amount of resistance I encountered from the end users. And it really surprised me, because this is a product that will really make their lives a lot easier. But people in general, I find, just don't like to change. And so, I mean, I would even go so far as to suggest trying to embed the adoption of the technology into their KPIs, along with then communicating and reinforcing all of the positive benefits of AI. And then a third one, I think, is definitely have some clear use cases and deliverables that are common across all of your markets, a place where you're going to see and demonstrate early wins, because demonstrating those early wins is going to give you the momentum from the stakeholders to put in the time and the effort required to do the more complicated use cases.
Thank you. Go for it, Ron.
I was just going to something Sandra said around for me the sort of expectation management of this technology is important.
Yes.
Because if you give it to the team and it's not 100% perfect, you might lose them, and people almost think AI is magic. Sometimes it might be, but it might also be, Paul, as you've said before, just very, very useful. So it might take one attempt or two attempts, but you get something very useful very quickly. And that's okay. That's a really good outcome. If the team's expecting magic straight away, then maybe with this new technology, you might lose them along the way somewhere. So I think that expectation management, and that's where bringing people along the journey, getting people involved, and a bit of that co-creation is important with markets.
A couple of people have just mentioned in the comments about the resistance not just being embracing technology, but people afraid of being replaced. I would offer the rather generalist statement that technology has never been a job loss creator in history. 20 years ago, we were all very scared that the internet would lose our jobs, and look at that, we created web designers and all was well with the world. Of course, it's a cliche, but it's those of us who are using or adapting according to AI that are going to fare best. But in general, technology has never created a net loss in roles. But Sandra, Ryan, you just a little bit more of you, and I'm keen to obviously have Nick come in a second, but anything on that fear?
I think it's not so much that they were afraid of losing their jobs, but that their jobs were evolving. So where previously they could brief an agency and hand it over, now we were asking them to brief the AI essentially. But there's a lot more creative thought or strategic thought that they had to go into, instead of just handing the problem over in its entirety to AI. They had to take on a little bit of that role. And there was a point actually that Ryan made just now about having clear expectations about what you're able to get out. It's also a case that, the quality of the prompt that you put into AI is going to directly correlate with what you get out of it. So there's a lot of work and a lot of effort in understanding and trialing and becoming proficient with the technology. And I think that was more of the barrier to the end user than being afraid of losing their jobs.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree, Sandra. That training part is important, isn't it? So it's not just the training responsibility organizations have, I think, is shifting a little bit. I don't think our industry has been great in the past few years in really, developing a lot of marketeers and do a lot of marketeer training where they used to be, I think, sort of 10, 15 years ago. But I think that training now that companies need to offer needs to be a little bit different, because people shouldn't be worried about losing their job. But yes, they need to probably adapt from a company perspective. Ideally, our internal teams are taking on some of these challenges, producing some of this content, using this technology, and doing it all at a lower cost and growing the profit of the organization. So that's where we'd like to get to. And there is a little bit of upskilling, I think, required, but I don't think it's too scary, and I think we should sort of lean into this rather than lean out.
Yeah, I agree.
So keen to hear from Nick and Casper on this point, but you can see I've just closed the poll. 60% of people saying the best way of evaluation is through testing and piloting. So there's definitely, despite what Ryan said earlier, we don't want hundreds and hundreds of pilots. That's definitely still the primary method. And then across the next question, a bit more of an even spread of answers. I think the winner was regulatory and compliance confidence as the thing that matters more than anything. I think that basically means we need pharma tailored tools and maybe not just ChatGPT, as Casper alluded to earlier, but also proven ROI and integration with tech, again, appearing strongly at the top of that list. I'm going to close that poll because I want to, look at those results if you haven't, because I want to get one or two more in before we finish. In the meantime, Nick, your scaling advice, Casper, again, your vision across multiple clients is super useful for this question.
Cool. So firstly, I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, sometimes it goes a bit quiet, Nick, but we can hear you just about.
Cool. So I'll speak a bit louder then. I guess, well, firstly in the comments, there was an interesting comment about internal prompts, a prompt library, which I thought was quite nice. So definitely steal that idea. But in terms of learnings, I think if I'm honest, one learning that we had was we created a bit of a perception last year that we were playing with some of our pilots. We were experimenting. And when you say that to senior managers, they hear wastage. If you're in a small, medium company, their view is let the big boys do that. So don't be early adopters. So I think probably the big learning that we had was around just more education, more framing why we were doing the pilots, be it improved efficiencies, better customer experience, and then more clearly defining the use cases and the business cases. So I think that if we'd done that a little bit more at the beginning, that would have helped not create that perception.
Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate it. Before I go to Casper, The Miro board has had more than 100 people on it, so make sure that you are being active there. It's still going on as we speak, so looking forward to having a look at that later. Casper?
I'm thinking about also what Sandra said in terms of the change management and so on. So maybe we shouldn't communicate so much about the cost savings and resource reductions, but actually more communicate that these initiatives will generate more productivity and enable, for example, personalization, which wasn't really easy to do before. So if you communicate more in a positive tone about what's going to happen, so that could be one piece of advice. I've seen it many times also in other areas. And the other piece of advice or thought I have is the change of roles, because when you get these tools at your fingertips, for example, a local brand manager might need a new job description, because before it was calling the agency. Now it might also be creating more content yourself with a little bit help of an agency instead, right? So I think, that's really difficult when you start to touch those kind of things. But if you're proactive about it, maybe it will be exciting.
Yeah, and Casper, how much in-housing of this do we realistically need to do? I laugh because my father was in charge of IT for an oil company you might have heard called Shell in the 90s. And he spent a lot of his time implementing a bespoke email system because it was believed to be technology so important that it must be held in-house. And of course, we can snigger at that now. But there are elements of that make me feel that doing it in-house with AI, when so many of us predict it to be so ubiquitous, it's going to be like electricity, as being something similar. It's very easy to laugh in hindsight, of course. Casper, what's your view? And I realize you might have a slight bias but you weren't that long ago working for a pharma company. So give us your very honest, if you can, opinion on whether the in-housing is futile, whether it has a place, or whether people should be, like you've been saying, and like people in the comments have been saying, call the agency.
I think you need internal capabilities. You need people who understand the area they work on. But pharma companies are not IT companies. They are not. They don't hire, the brightest in that field. They are much better at inventing new medicines and engaging with customers. So my recommendation is that they benefit from, the companies that offer solutions that are, developed for multiple uses, rather than trying to become software companies. But again, I have seen big companies using in-housing AI, but I haven't seen the results from that yet.
Okay. As you can see, I'm sharing this poll question, the biggest internal blocker, quite a spread again, 23% saying regulatory and compliance uncertainty. It's interesting because when I also asked the question, what's the biggest thing holding us back? That question doesn't get a high response on the regulatory and compliance. So that's an interesting thing there. Which of these would trigger you to invest more? Clear ROI, which we, from use cases, we obviously enjoyed some of the examples we heard today. That's a quarter of people. Easy integration, 23%. So once again, it's ROI and integration. Those two keep coming to the very top of the list in every poll pretty much today. That's very interesting. Any final reflection from Nick, Sandra, or Ryan? We've only got a minute or two left, I'm afraid. So any thoughts on indeed what you are needing to do when it comes to in-housing or scaling? Final thoughts.
Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
No, I was just going to pick up on the ROI point. I think this is, pharma is not necessarily very good at looking at ROI, true ROI, even of our existing sales teams. Whenever something new is introduced, we always ask the ROI question, but we don't often look at what we've got currently in the ROI of that. I think in this space, it's probably pretty easy to determine what the ROI is. I think you can measure the investment, and you can certainly, if you've got those use cases where you're plotting out what did happen versus what happens now, what savings, efficiencies we're making, I think that can quickly get you to the ROI point that you might need to share with leadership.
Thank
you. Sandra and Nick, you've only got time for a sentence each as we have hit
one sentence. Okay, my closing sentence is that understand upfront that there is a lot of work that goes into it. And I think accepting that you will get a huge benefit out of it, but it's not an easy fix. So I think just keep that in mind. It's a long road, but the road is definitely worth it.
And Nick. Oh, Nick, you're muted, or at least we can't hear you. Oh, no, you're back. Go for it. Go for it.
Just that my instinct would be, certainly with the use cases we've heard today, buy rather than build. It'll be quicker.
Love it. Succinct and to the point. Well, on that bombshell, mic drop from Nick, we're going to have to finish today's session. Thank you so much for obviously all of your contributions, panel. I also really enjoyed some of the chat and the questions. A few requests for an AI summary. You know, we were writing human-led summaries, but we'll if you have a preference for AI, then of course we will distribute that. Special thanks to Casper and his team who've helped make sure today's webinar were happening. Some great use cases shared. Please write in the chat what you'd like to hear more of. What should we cover next? What are the specific unanswered questions that you'd wish we had time for? Do please get to that. Thank you for filling in this final poll. If you can see, one of the questions is about a follow-up roundtable conversation. We are going to be doing that on the 26th of June, which is only a week ago. I'm going to try and coerce Sandra, Ryan, Nick, and Casper to join that session. They don't know it yet, but they will be given undue amounts of pressure to come along to that, so we can hear even more from them. But if you want to come along, please make sure you sign up for that. I'll see many of you also at Pharmageddon in October. And of course, as Casper said, give the agency a call if you're struggling with any of this. I'm sure that he and his colleagues would be glad to help. Nick, Sandra, Ryan, Casper, absolutely marvelous having you here. Thank you so much. You better pop off to your next meeting before you're late, but really appreciate the time you spent with us here today. Thanks all.
Thank you, Paul.